Turns out if you go to college and get an advanced degree, a master's or a doctorate, where these are degrees where you actually question the state of existing knowledge. The undergraduate degree doesn't really do that. You're learning from textbooks that are written by somebody else. Your doctrines are already there. The higher degrees imply that you are questioning the very fabric of the knowledge you had previously learned. Among that community, it's 60%. It has dropped. Well, that's interesting. Let's keep going. How about scientists of all stripes? So a biologist, chemist, let's include engineers as well. People who have formal scientific training, mathematicians as well. Okay, what happens next? Drops to 40%. Now, if you look at this number, it looks like, wow, so scientists, the public is 90%, scientists are 40%. No, the drop is not that significant because every scientist has an advanced degree. So in fact, the drop is not from 90 to 40, the drop is from 60 to 40. So becoming a scientist is not as big an effect on whether you're religious as you might otherwise think. Most of the drop comes because you're educated beyond the level of college. So that's 40%. So now you go to elite scientists, members of the National Academy, highly accomplished subset among scientists, the number drops to 7%. There was a headline in Nature, the British journal Nature, which said, after the study was released, 93% of elite scientists reject God. So that was supposed to be a shocking headline. And I look at that and I said, that's not even interesting. That was the trend line anyway. What's more interesting, which was not the headline, is that 7% of elite scientists pray to a God. Isn't that a more interesting fact to you? Isn't that kind of interesting? The most accomplished scientists in the world, in that community, 7% of them still pray to a personal God. I think that is deserving of more study than the 93% who don't. Because something's going on there. We don't know what. And I have confronted people on this. I would say, to the most sort of vociferous in the atheist community, I would say, you're beating the public over the head, telling them, why are you doing it? And I'm thinking, before you beat the public, why don't you beat them over the head, okay? No, I'm just saying, if you're gonna rank, you understand that first, because if you can't convert that 7%, you've got no hope in the general public. That's all I'm saying. This is among the ranks of the scientifically educated. Now, philosophers basically invented atheism. And if you check the statistic for philosophers, it's below 1%. There are no the only religious philosophers there are, they're like theologian philosophers, all right? If you subtract the theologic philosophers, this number is essentially 0, all right? So they're basically birthed atheism, the philosophers. And there's this talk, I don't know here in Australia, does the Bible in the public school class or not? No, is it by law or is it just by tradition? Is it by law? Okay, so in America there's this understanding that the state and the church are separate. And by and large that's been honored for most of the history of the country, by and large. And what's interesting about America, a point that was a little bit alluded to earlier today, is that it was founded on the principle that the state has no religion. The state is indifferent to what religion you might have. So that means there's no authority over you that's going to tell you who and what to worship. And that's a state that we all take for granted, but so many places in the world that is not true. Well, there's a case in New Jersey where a middle school kid was lectured to by the history teacher in a public school, and the history teacher said, if you don't accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior, you are going to hell. And there's a little Muslim girl there, said you are already damned to hell. First point. Second, that Noah had dinosaurs on his ark. Third point he made is that Big Bang and evolution are just theories and you can take them or leave them. So, I don't, like I said, I don't get into these. I just don't. We got people who do this. We've got the four horsemen. We got our boy here who's coming up after. We got people who fight this stuff. I'm not one of those, really. I'm doing this because, like, I know you're all, this is the bone I'm throwing you, but I don't do this. So, but then I thought about it and I said, I have an op-ed, a letter to the editor on this that I can write. And I left out the part about Jesus. I left that out. Because if that's how he feels, he wants you to be Christian, that's okay, fine. I left that out. I went to the rest of what he said. And this was my letter, as it appeared in the New York Times. People cited violation of the First Amendment when that's a separation of church and state, essentially. New Jersey school teacher asserted that evolution and the Big Bang are not scientific and that Noah's Ark carried dinosaurs. The case is not about the need to separate church and state. It's about the need to separate ignorant, scientifically illiterate people from the ranks of teachers. That's the problem. If he wants to believe Jesus is a savior, that's not synonymous with being scientifically illiterate, because 40% of American scientists pray to a personal God. What is identical with being scientifically illiterate is that if Noah was a human being, he did not have dinosaurs on his ark, because humans and dinosaurs did not coexist, all right? Every one of those scientists knows that, even the 40% who pray to God. So this is how I've sort of split the kingdom there. Then you get the billboard wars. Okay, this was fun. Big Bang Theory. You got to be kidding. God. All right. So this goes on. This is what we put up with. All right. So then then there was like, let's come back. Praise Darwin, evolved beyond belief. Freedom from religion founded. So the billboard wars are in progress here. There's some people who are like okay with God and okay with sort of how things evolve, so they ride the fence. So here's a bumper sticker, the Big Bang Theory. God spoke and bang, it happened, So they're excited about both, God and the Big Bang. But then we had this idiot back in May, Judgment Day. Did this Judgment Day stuff reach below the equator? Jeez, okay. Yeah, it was. Now the good thing is unlike other predictions, like Jesus will come one day, this had a date, okay? You could test it. This was like easy to test. You just sort of wait around for it, all right? So, now it turns out that May 21st was only the day Jesus was supposed to show up. The actual end of the world is October 21st. So the end of the world is still to come this year. This is directly from the website. So I had to tweet. So this was May 21st. So on May 21st or May 20th, I tweeted this. If Jesus actually arrives May 21st, it'll be easy to convince skeptics. If he doesn't show up, do the faithful become atheists? That was my question. Now, in a Twitter stream, it's a live conversation with complete strangers. Everybody depositing their 140 characters worth of thought. So here this is. There was a huge reaction to that tweet. Now, you would expect that most of my followers, or at least a big fraction of them, would be sort of atheistic. So you'd expect people to say, this guy's an idiot, why are we even spending any time on them? Well, one such person did make such a reply, but not in the way you might think. No, anyone who's read the Bible knows this camping asshole was full of shit from the start. Okay. So what do you do with that? So this is somebody complaining about the prediction of Jesus coming because he says this other guy doesn't know jack about the Bible, but this guy does. And went on, there are other places where people quoted that one can't know when Jesus comes. So the fact that this guy's saying he knows means he doesn't read the Bible. So this is what's out there. People who are ready to vociferously argue about who knows the Bible the least. September 11th, 2001, we just had our 10th anniversary of that. I happen to live 3.5 blocks from what became known as Ground Zero. This image was taken outside my dining room window. The North Tower is on fire. These are 110-story buildings, the World Trade Center towers. This image is the instant the South Tower was hit. It was hit from the left. You could not see the entry point because we're blocked by this other black building. It's a hotel, a 50-story hotel, which is just kind of in the foreground. You see part of the South Tower punching out. This is before the jet fuel had ignited. And when you ignite jet fuel, you set a deflagration wave, not a bomb wave. It's a different kind of wave. It's not accompanied by a shock. This is a split second after that. The fuel has ignited, creating more pressure. And within a split second of that, the entire South Tower was engulfed. And this is fragments of plane and bodies and office coming out the other side. Now, why am I dragging you through this? Okay, 62 minutes later, both buildings had collapsed. And there was blue sky where there was once these buildings. This is directly outside of my apartment building, and the emergency vehicles had come. This is the pulverized World Trade Center dust that had settled several inches of it. I say this because shortly after this gentleman got up, President of the United States, George W. Bush. This is actually my photo of him. I was in that room at that time when he spoke. See the medals there on the table? I was on a committee to tell him who to give those medals to the Presidential Medal of Science. And so he actually gave them to everyone we told him to give them to, except he didn't read their citations. He's smart enough to know not to pronounce any of the science words that were in the citations. So he put the medal around the neck. Somebody else read the citations. Shortly after September 11th, he gets up. I don't remember where he gave the speech. And he says, in an attempt to distinguish we from they, he says, our God is the God who named the stars. This is before I was on his Rolodex. You know, I could have saved him from himself, okay? It's a loose quote from Genesis that says God named all the stars in the sky, okay? First of all, it's the same God, so he's got that wrong. But Allah, God of Islam and God of the Jewish God, it's the same God. They call them different names, but it's the same book delivering you the same God. Apart from him getting that wrong, he says, our God is the God who named the stars. What he just didn't know, 2/3 of all stars in the night sky have Arabic names. 2/3 of all stars that have names these are all the Arabic star names. All of these. I don't think this is the point he wanted to make. I don't think he figured that out. Like I said, it was before I was on his Rolodex. And so you say, well, how does this happen? How do you get a culture where stars in the night sky are named by them? What was going on? How did that happen? And you have to go back 1,000 years, and you get to Islam in what's the golden period of Islam. In that period, algebra was invented. Algorithm is an Arabic word. All these words that begin with AL, 10 to 1, it's an Arabic word. Our numerals are Arabic numerals. Did you pause and reflect on why we call them Arabic numerals? We just call them that, right? But somebody did good stuff with these numerals. It was in Baghdad 1,000 years ago where they invented algebra. And there was advances in mathematics, agriculture, engineering, all of these fields. All at a time when Europe was disemboweling heretics. So something changed. 12th century, this gentleman came around, Al-Ghazali, a Muslim scholar, learned. At this point, Islam is maybe just a few hundred years old. People are reading the Quran and interpreting it however they sort of want to and feel like it. There's not a coherence to the practice of Islam until he comes around and codifies the behavior of a good Muslim. In much the same way St. Augustine, in his book, Cities of God, codified what it is to be a good Christian. How do you burn the witches? There's a recipe for that. They got to be upside down so the blood does, it's a whole itinerary for how to be a good Muslim. And in his writings contain the assertion that the manipulation of numbers is the work of the devil. 2, actions that you see in nature are the will of Allah. Well, if you drop a stone and it falls, Allah willed that. If that's your explanation, your curiosity stops. You combine everything happening in nature being the will of Allah to the manipulation of numbers being the work of the devil, and the entire enterprise of that golden era collapses. Now, historians, when they look at that era, they say, well, the Mongols came and they, so historians think of the world in terms of wars and kings. They think less about it philosophically, about intellectual movements or the absence thereof. Islam rose again after this period, didn't have science associated with it. No new inventions in math. You look at the period of Islam in Spain, the period where the great Alhambra was built. There is no attendant science going on there. It's done, it's gone, and it is a cost that exists to this day. There is 1.3 billion Muslims in the world today who are not participants on the frontier of scientific discovery. What's the best measure of this? Just check out the Nobel Prizes. I tallied them, okay? How many Jews have won the Nobel Prize? In the sciences, here they go. 25% of all Nobel Prizes in the sciences are won by Jews. How many Jews in the world? About 15 million, tops? 15 million? How many Muslims in the world? 1.3 billion, which is huger, way huger than 15 million. How many Muslims have won the Nobel Prize in the sciences? 2.5. 2. I can't bring myself to call economics a science. I'm sorry. I just can't. I've tried. I've really tried. I'm sorry. That's how many. And the physics one was a Pakistani physicist, not a Middle Eastern physicist. So, Jews have 50 times the number of Nobel Prizes. They're 1/80th of the population of the Muslims. That's 4,000 times the impact. I lose sleep every night wondering how many secrets of the universe lay undiscovered because 1/6 of the population of the world is not a participant on the exploration frontier. What thoughts have gone undreamt of? All right? This is in response to the people out there who say, oh, Earth is just perfect for life. Oh, what a haven in all the universe, just right. It's not just right. Every opportunity it gets, it tries to kill us. Add it up. The tsunamis, the hurricanes, the tornadoes, the asteroids, the 3/4 of the Earth. If I drop you butt naked, you're dead 10 minutes later. Because something eats you, okay?
So this is the anti-Gaia proposition?
Anti-Gaia, yeah. Earth is bad for life. And evidence of that is, look at the fossil record. 99% of all species that ever lived are now extinct. That is not the signature of a planet that is in love with life.
If I could ask you, if there was one thing you wanted people to remember that you could say about science, what would that be?
That the universe is knowable, and one need not appeal to mystical, magical forces to account for things. Even if a day arises where something unfolds in front of your eyes that you cannot explain, just because you cannot explain it does not mean it is being driven by mystical, magical forces. It just means it's being driven by laws of physics that we know and you have yet to learn, or that we have all yet to discover. But the universe is knowable, and that's an amazing thing. It's knowable by our feeble human brain that rose up out of the Serengeti, the plains of Africa, to rise up just to survive, to not get eaten, and we build a civilization where we have sufficient free time so that we can contemplate our place in the universe.
How could anybody know that there's a heaven, that they're going somewhere, that there's an afterlife? How could anyone know that?
No,
that boggles my mind.
They can believe. they know.
Well, but belief is, I could believe that it's raining,
Well,
but
that's
it
right.
ain't.
Well, this is the difference between believing something and using the methods and tools of science to establish what is objectively true. And what is objectively true is something that is true outside of your belief system. That's what science is.
Facts and belief. I know the religious people believe, the scientist says prove. What do you believe? What do you think happens when we die?
Well, so I can make some unassailable statements about what happens when you die. So you spend your life eating food. Food has a calorie content, and calorie is a source of energy. Calorie is a unit of energy. You bring it in, and then the energy is available for you to maintain your body temperature at nearly 100 degrees. It's 98.6. How do you keep something at 100 degrees when nothing else around you is? You're burning energy to sustain that. Because biologically, we need to be at that temperature to function, okay? You also need energy to walk and to move. That's why you eat food. The moment you die, what happens? You don't maintain the energy. Your temperature drops. How far does it drop? To room temperature. At a funeral, in the casket, if you touch the hand of the person in the casket, your first thought is, the body's cold. No, it's not, it's room temperature. But it's cold compared to 100 degrees. They're no longer burning this energy. Okay, so now, every one of your molecules has energy within it. If you get cremated, that energy gets released in the form of heat. And you heat the air, and that air radiates to space. You get buried, which is how I want my body to be disposed of. Bury me. Bury me. Because you know why? I don't want the energy content of my body to just get radiated out into space of no use to anybody. Put me in the ground. Let the worms, microbes come in and out of my body. And the energy content of my body that I had assembled over my lifetime, consuming the flora and fauna of this earth, my body then returns to them. And thus is the cycle of life. I know that's going to happen because you can measure where the energy goes. And that's how I want to go out.
But you're not conscious, and that's for eternity, right?
Yeah, there's no evidence that I have any consciousness of anything. And by the way, is that so weird? Did you have consciousness before you were born? Were you saying, how come I'm not on Earth? My gosh, I need to be on Earth. Or where am I? No, there's just the state of non-existence. And so I'm not given any reason.
But now I am born,
okay,
and I can't stand the thought of non-existence. See, I already have existence. I accept
okay, it is true. We fear death because we are born knowing only life.
Right.
I get that. However, I take another view, because I've been asked, if you could live forever, would you?
Yes.
Okay, we're done with the interview.
Finish the sentence.
Yes. No, okay, sure, that's an attractive idea. But the way I look at it is the knowledge that I'm going to die that creates the focus that I bring to being alive. The urgency of accomplishment. The need to express love. Now, not later. If we live forever, why ever even get out of bed in the morning? Because you always have tomorrow. That's not the kind of life I want to lead.
But why, don't you fear not being around?
I fear living a life where I could have accomplished something and didn't. That's what I fear. I don't fear death.
You don't fear the unknown?
I love the unknown. I love the, you know what I want on my tombstone? My sister has this in her notes, because in case I can't tell anyone after I die. On my tombstone, a quote from Horace Mann, the great educator. Be ashamed to die until you have scored some victory for humanity. That's what I want on my tombstone.
But you don't fear or think about not being around.
Như vậy chúng ta nhìn vào đây, chúng ta thấy nó dao động chỉ từ đây lên tới đây thôi, hoặc từ vị trí này xuống tới vị trí này thôi. Đúng không ạ? Nó dao động trong cái đoạn này. Và từ vị trí cân bằng đến cái đoạn xa nhất là biên độ A. Đúng không? Đây là pin dương và đoạn này cũng là bằng luôn. Đây là pin âm, đúng chưa? Là trừ A. Như vậy đầu tiên nhìn vào đồ thị, các bạn coi cái thằng nào lệch dài nhất thì thằng đó là pin độ. Thế thôi. Rồi, tiếp theo người ta có thể hỏi về pha. Ví dụ như người ta hỏi pha ban đầu đi. Đúng chưa? Pha ban đầu là chữ phi đó. Thì pha ban đầu này các em phải dựa vào điều kiện ban đầu cho thầy. Tức là điều kiện ban đầu, tức là tại điều kiện t bằng 0 nè, chúng ta coi x0 nó bằng bao nhiêu. Đúng chưa? x0 nó bằng bao nhiêu. Và chúng ta có thể dựa vào đường tròn lượng z, hoặc là chúng ta có thể tính trực tiếp cos phi này bằng x0 chia a cho thầy. Được chưa ạ? Và nếu ra ở chỗ này thì theo đúng toán học luôn, phi của chúng ta phải ra cộng trừ, giả sử như là một cái góc alpha nào đó. Và chúng ta muốn biết là lấy dấu cộng hay dấu trừ, tức là phi này bằng cộng góc alpha hoặc là trừ góc alpha, thì các bạn chú ý thêm một cái điều nữa. Nếu nó chuyển động theo chiều dương thì phi các bạn lấy nghiệp âm. Và ngược lại, nếu nó chuyển động theo chiều âm thì phi các bạn lấy là dương cho thầy. Được chưa? Đó là cách giải của chúng ta. Đó là cách thứ nhất, chúng ta tìm pha ban đầu. Thầy nhắc lại nha. Muốn tìm pha ban đầu, chúng ta phải dựa vào điều kiện ban đầu. Tức là tại điều kiện ban đầu này nè, cái thằng x0 này, vị trí ban đầu nó ở đâu? Ví dụ như cụ thể cái bài này đi, cái đồ thị này đi. Tại thời điểm ban đầu nó đang ở tức là tại thời điểm t bằng